morning, friends. I feel very blessed to have friends like you. Friends that care about the things I care about, who appreciate the same things. There's an early Buddhist text called the Upada Sutta. And in there, Ananda says to the Buddha, "Oh, Kalyana Mitata, or good friendship, is half of the holy life." He's praising friendship, but he's not praising friendship enough, according to the Buddha. The Buddha says, "No, don't say that, Ananda. Good friendship is the whole of the holy life. A person with good friends can be expected to advance along the Eightfold Path." The internet provides us a wonderful opportunity to practice our good friendship skills, to be good friends, and to find good friends. This morning I'm going to keep reading from Old Path, White Clouds. It's Thich Nhat Hanh's telling of the Buddha's story. And in this chapter, he covers a piece where the Buddha teaches Anuruddha. Uttaya. The wanderer Uttaya teaches him by not teaching him, by not responding to certain questions. Sometimes silence is potent. These questions the Buddha won't answer because in this situation they don't lead to the end of suffering. But other places the Buddha might address the question. If the context is different, if the answer is helpful. Good morning. Here, though, the Buddha is not going to answer these questions. Oh, and then the Buddha begins to talk to a person named Anuruddha. That's where I was getting that name. Happens later in the chapter. But then after I read, then I'll sit, and I will invite you to sit with me, or stand, or walk, or lay down, and breathe. Be aware of where we are and what we're doing. We'll come really close to our own direct experience. Good morning. Little by little, as we practice, we set aside little bits of time for ourselves to be aware of what we're doing. Little by little, we get more and more familiar with our own direct experience. My tablet doesn't have very much battery power left, so I may get cut off. We'll see what happens. I'm gonna start reading. Thank you for joining me. One day during a rainstorm, a wanderer, or an ascetic, shramana, named Uttaya came to visit the Buddha. Ananda led him into the hut and introduced him to the Buddha. The ascetic, the wanderer, the shramana, was invited to sit down, and Ananda offered him a towel to dry himself. He's all wet. He's drying off. Uttaya asked the Buddha, "Monk Gautama, is the world eternal, or will it one day perish?" The Buddha smiled and said, "Wanderer Uttaya, with your consent, I will not answer that question." Uttaya then asked, "Is the world finite or infinite?" I will not answer that question either. Well then, are body and spirit one or two? I will not answer that question either. After you die, will you continue to exist or not? This question too, I will not answer. Or perhaps you hold that after death, you will neither continue to exist nor cease to exist. Wanderer Uttaya, I will not answer that question either. Uttaya looked confounded. He said, Monk Gautama, you have refused to answer every question I've asked. What question will you answer? The Buddha replied, I only answer questions that pertain directly to the practice of gaining mastery over one's mind and body in order to overcome all sorrows and anxieties. How many people in the world do you think your teaching can save? Asked Uttaya. And the Buddha sat silently. The ascetic Uttaya said no more. Sensing that the wanderer felt the Buddha didn't want to answer him or was unable to, Ananda took pity on the man and spoke up. Wanderer Uttaya, perhaps this example will help you better understand my teacher's intent. Imagine a king who dwells in a strongly fortified palace, surrounded by a wide moat and wall. There is only one entrance and exit to the palace, which is guarded day and night. The vigilant guard will only allow people he knows into the palace. No one else is granted permission to enter. The guard has furthermore made a careful check of the palace wall to make sure there are no gaps or cracks big enough for even a kitten to squeeze through. The king sits on his throne without concern for how many people enter the palace. He knows the guard will prevent all unwelcome guests from entering. It is similar for Monk Gautama. He is not concerned with the number of people who follow his way. He is only concerned with teaching the way which has the capacity to dissolve greed, anger, and delusion, so that those who follow the way can realize peace, joy, and liberation. Good morning. Ask my teacher questions about how to master the mind and body, and he will surely answer you. Wanderer Uttaya understood Ananda's example, but because he was still entangled in questions of a metaphysical nature, he asked no more. He departed feeling somewhat unsatisfied with his encounter with the Buddha. A few days later, another ascetic named Vacchagotta came to visit the Buddha. He asked the Buddha questions of a similar nature. For instance, he asked, Monk Gautama, could you please tell me whether or not there is a self? The Buddha sat silently. He did not say a word. After asking several questions and receiving no reply, Vacchagotta stood up and left. After he was gone, Venerable Ananda asked the Buddha, Lord, you speak about the non-self in your Dharma talks all the time. Happy Tuesday! You speak about not-self, anatman, all the time. Why wouldn't you answer Vacchagotta's questions about the self? And the Buddha replied, Ananda, the teaching on the emptiness of self is meant to guide our meditation. It is not to be taken as a doctrine. If people take it as a doctrine, a dogma, a notion, they will become entangled by it. Elsewhere throughout another set of teachings in this Lankavatara Sutra, the Buddha says that it's better to hold on to the notion of a self the size of the largest mountain than it is to cling to the notion of self as dependent on assertion and negation. Self as, or not self as voidness. That's what happens when we reify not self. Good morning, good morning. We go from clinging to the notion of a self to clinging to the notion of the absence of self. I have often said that the teaching should be considered as a raft used to cross to the other shore, or a finger pointing to the moon. We should not become caught in the teaching. The wanderer Vachagota wanted me to hand him a doctrine, but I do not want him to become trapped by any doctrine, whether it be a doctrine of the self or the non-self. If I told him there was a self, that would contradict my teaching. But if I told him there was no self, and he clings to that as a doctrine, it would not benefit him. It is better to remain silent than to answer such questions. It is better for people to think I do not know their answers, or the answers to their questions, than for them to become trapped in narrow views, notions. One day, you're welcome. One day, Venerable Anuruddha was stopped by a group of wanderers. They did not want to let him pass until he answered their question. They asked him, "We have heard that your teacher is a completely enlightened master, and that his teaching is subtle and profound. You are his disciple. Therefore, answer this. When Monk Gautama dies, will he continue to exist, or will he cease to exist?" This kind of thing happens all the time on the internet. People want to trap you in their questions. They want to say, "Oh, if you're such a Buddhist, answer me this." And they want to engage in debate. They want to argue. The ascetics told Anuruddha that he must select from one of the four possibilities. When he dies, Monk Gautama will continue to exist. When he dies, Monk Gautama will cease to exist. When he dies, Monk Gautama will both continue to exist and cease to exist. When he dies, Monk Gautama will neither continue to exist nor cease to exist. These are the four propositions. It's a kind of logical frame. The four negations that I mentioned in the description are the answer to these four propositions. It's a Buddhist tool set that has existed from the beginning. There was a guy named Piro. He traveled with Alexander the Great to India before any of the Buddhist texts had been canonized, written down, and made into doctrine. So he encountered Buddhists in northwestern India, and he learned about these four negations. He brought this style back to his home. He taught this kind of skepticism. But it's not the total negation. It's open-mindedness. It's perfect open-mindedness. We leave open the possibility that there may be a correct view. But until then, we keep our hands up. We're like, I don't know. Maybe. Because views aren't the core. Views aren't what matters. Views are views. Bhikkhu, the monk, Anuruddha knew that none of these four responses was compatible with the true teaching. He remained silent. So all throughout this chapter we see the use of silence. The wanderers did not want to accept his silence. They tried in vain to force him to select one of the four responses. At last, the Venerable said, "My friends, according to my understanding, none of these four responses can accurately express the truth concerning monk Gautama." And the wanderers burst out laughing. One said, "This monk must be newly ordained. He doesn't possess the ability to answer our question. No wonder he's trying to avoid giving an answer. We'd better let him go." A few days later, Venerable Anuruddha presented the wanderer's questions to the Buddha and said, "Lord, please enlighten us so that we can better answer such questions when they arise in the future." And the Buddha said, "Anuruddha, it is impossible to find monk Gautama through conceptual knowledge. There is something subtle beyond the sphere of reasoning to be experienced by the wise. This is Buddhist mysticism. There's something beyond thoughts, words, and stories. Thoughts, words, and stories won't capture the Buddha." So he says it's impossible that I can be limited or captured by conceptual knowledge. Where is monk Gautama? Anuruddha, can Gautama be found in form? No, Lord. Can Gautama be found in feelings? No, Lord. Can Gautama be found in perceptions, mental formations, or consciousness? These are the five skandhas, the five aggregates that constitute a being. Instead of Atman, we have these heaps, this process, these five categories. Form, feelings, mental formations, perceptions, and consciousness. The Buddha looked at Anuruddha. "Where then can you find Gautama?" "Anuruddha, right this moment as you stand before Gautama, you cannot grab hold of him. How much less so after he dies? Anuruddha, the essence of Gautama, like the essence of all dharmas, cannot be grasped by conceptual knowledge or in the categories of mental discrimination by these four propositions. One must see the dharmas in interdependent relation with all other dharmas. It is an open system. You must see Gautama in all the dharmas normally thought of as not Gautama. We are all made of not self elements. Here's Gautama, there's Gautama, nowhere is Gautama. Anuruddha, if you want to see the essence of a lotus flower, you must see the lotus present in all the dharmas normally thought of as non-lotus, such as the sun, pond water, clouds, mud, and heat. Only by looking in this way can we tear asunder the web of narrow views, the web of mental discrimination which creates the prisons of birth, death, here, there, existence, non-existence, immaculate, increasing, and decreasing. Hello. The wanderer's four categories of existence, non-existence, both existence and non-existence, and neither existence nor non-existence, are spider webs among spider webs, which can never take hold of the enormous bird of reality. So those four propositions are spider webs that can't catch the bird. The four negations free us from views. When we know how to use them properly, they are wonderful tools to help bring about this freedom, this bliss of freedom. Anuruddha, reality in itself cannot be expressed by conceptual knowledge or by written and spoken language. Only the understanding which meditation brings can help us recognize the essence of reality by looking deeply, directly, like I was saying in the beginning of the video, by coming close to our own direct experience, by looking directly at mundane reality. Ourselves, we find supra-mundane reality. It's not in clinging to belief. It's not in a collection of rules or a list of words or stories. Wisdom dismantles all of that, but love keeps the bodhisattvas engaged in liberating beings, including themselves. Anuruddha, the nature of all dharmas is unconditioned and can be called suchness. Tathata, or suchness, is the wondrous nature of all dharmas. From suchness the lotus arises. Anuruddha arises from suchness. Good afternoon, good morning for me. Time is empty too. Gautama arises from suchness. We can call someone who arises from suchness a Tathagata, one who thus comes, one who comes from suchness. Arising from suchness. Where do all dharmas return? All dharmas return to suchness. Returning to suchness can also be expressed by the term Tathagata. We have Tathagata, or one who thus goes. In truth, dharmas do not arise from anywhere or go to any place, because their nature is already suchness. Anuruddha, the truer meaning of suchness is one who comes from nowhere and one who goes nowhere. Anuruddha, from now on, I will call myself Tathagata, Tathagata. Depending on where you place the emphasis, it means one who comes from suchness and one who goes to suchness. We're all Tathagata, Tathagata. I like this term because it avoids the discrimination that arises when one uses the word I and mine. Anuruddha smiled and said, "We know that all of us arise in suchness, but we will reserve the name Tathagata for you. Every time you refer to yourself as Tathagata, we will be reminded how we all have the nature of suchness, which has no beginning and no end, no birth, no death. Where there's no birth, no death, there's also no abiding." That's interesting stuff. Tricky. The Buddha smiled too and said, "The Tathagata is pleased with your suggestion, Anuruddha." Venerable Ananda was present at this conversation between the Buddha and Venerable Anuruddha. He followed Anuruddha out of the hut and suggested that they share the conversation with the rest of the community at the next day's Dharma discussion. Anuruddha happily agreed. He said he would introduce the exchange by first recounting his meeting with the wanderers in Savatthi. That was the chapter. I love that chapter. It's so potent. It captures the essence of the Buddha's teaching. Wipe away the views using the tools of the four negations. And although the views have been wiped away, although they have been dismantled, although the bodhisattvas don't see sentient beings as sentient beings, they remain engaged by the force of the momentum of their vow to liberate, this love. So we have wisdom that dismantles and love that remains engaged. Thai teaches engaged Buddhism. It is possible to turn the Buddha's teaching into a dogma or set of dogmas, into a doctrine. And it has been done. But still, it's open. It's wide open. All the Dharma doors are open. The Buddha gang is still alive. Now let's dwell in suchness. Ta. We look deeply at suchness, at the intrinsic reality. And what do we see? We see emptiness, shunyata. And this looking deeply at things as they are has also been well expressed in a meditation tradition called Mahamudra. This Mahamudra meditation has given me so much. I feel that it is necessary to mention next to the teachings of Thich Nhat Hanh. Sometimes I share about that. Mahamudra is the great seal stamped on all things, all mundane things, all conventional things are already ultimate reality. They're just various permutations, various appearances of ultimate reality. We already abide in this pure land of this present moment, in the kingdom of God, whatever you want to call it. Okay, dwelling in suchness, I know I am breathing in. Breathing out, I know I am breathing out. Breathing in is a useful anchor. Breathing out is a useful anchor. Breathing in, I know I'm breathing in. Breathing out, I know I am breathing out. In and out. In and out. Breathing in, I see myself as a flower. Breathing out, I feel so fresh. Flower. Fresh. Flower. Fresh. Breathing in, I see myself as a mountain. Breathing out, I feel stable. Mountain. Solid. Mountain. Solid. Mountain. Stable. Breathing in, I see myself as space. Breathing out, I feel open. Space. Open. Space. Open. Space. Open. Space. Open. Breathing in, I see myself as light. Breathing out, I feel bright. Light. Creative. Light. Bright. Light. Bright. Light. Bright. Light. Bright. Breathing in, I see myself as a cloud. Breathing out, I feel free. Cloud. Free. Cloud. Free. Breathing in, I know I am breathing in. Breathing out, I know I am breathing out. And I repeat. I'm gonna get out of here. These mosquitoes are eating me. Thank you for joining me. I felt good about this reading. I feel recharged and ready for the day. I hope you all have wonderful days. I'll talk to you soon. Send me a message. I love talking about Buddhism and meditation. Leave a comment. I'll respond later. Bye-bye. A lotus for you, a Buddha to be. Bye-bye.